Hey guys, welcome to the show. I'm Rantoinette. Boy, do we got a lot of news to get through the day. Most of it is pretty crappy, I gotta say. But there will be some funny spots. I'll have a couple of segments that will yeah, at least make you chuckle a little bit, and hopefully a couple of them will make you think. Um, Before we get started, I'd like to mention that we have just crossed the 5 year anniversary of George Floyd's death and the beginning of well, not really the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement, but uh, what most people, most normie people think is the beginning of the Black Lives Matter movement. I just thought I should mention it. It's been 5 years since George Floyd was killed, and we should remember that. But anyway, let's get started with the big beautiful bill. That's not really that beautiful, and it is big though. It's 1,100 pages worth of big, and a lot of Republicans signed it without even reading it. And now we get to look a little bit deeper into it now that it's out. We're starting to see some more stuff. I've already mentioned before the two biggest cuts are about $900 billion, nearly $1 trillion cut from Medicaid, and there is a about 500 if no sorry $400 billion cut from SNAP, biggest cut we've ever had from SNAP. And it's going to affect a lot of poor and working class people. Most of the people that are using these services, Medicaid and SNAP, they are generally working class people. We've gone through this before, that most of these people, these work requirements that they're putting on it to make these cuts or these reforms or whatever they want to call it, the Republicans want to call it, Mike Johnson especially. They've been going through the rounds lately with the new trope that they have, all of these lazy 30-year-old able-bodied people that are sitting at home in their mom's basement playing video games on the couch and just collecting welfare. I mean, this is the new welfare queens. And if I'm not mistaken, and I mean, just thinking back, just before the election, all you'd hear from Republicans are young men are being put upon. They're working too hard. They're not getting enough. They're not getting what they need. And they're lonely and they're sad. And we need to bolster them up. And now all of a sudden the argument is these able-bodied men are lazy and they're sitting around on their asses and sucking on the government tit. But let's look a little bit deeper into what the cuts are. First off, we had, under Joe Biden, we had some tax breaks for clean energy and solar, and those are gone now. They've gotten rid of those. So if you have some solar panels on your house, or you're trying to, you're a locality that's trying to, create some, generate some business through clean energy, which, by the way, if you're a rich guy out there and you're trying to make some money, this would be the new thing, man. Solar power, geothermal technology, wave technology, wind technology. We could be going through the gamut and you guys could be making fucking bank. But no, we're going to stick with the oil and the coal. Yeah, man, that's going to work out great. I haven't even thought about climate change in the last, few months, because we're not even remotely going to come close to that. So let's keep going through the list here. They're cutting into clean energy. They're cutting into solar. All of those tax breaks that we had before, those are gone now. Federal employees' retirement benefits are getting chopped. And this is what I thought was really interesting, was there's this thing called FREEZE, FRES, and it's federal retirement employees. And those benefits are getting chopped. But if you are a civil servant and you having that status as a civil servant, you are able to have safeguards against getting fired. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Schedule F, but this was the thing that Donald Trump tried to start in 2020 before he got voted out of office. And it's, clever, Schedule F. You're fired. It's so on brand for Donald Trump. But the being a civil servant, you have some protections against getting fired by the president. You're not really supposed to be fired by the president, but this new Schedule F thing is giving him a little bit more leeway in firing federal employees. Now, they're offering this deal in the bill. They're offering this deal of you can get rid of your civil service status, or we can take $3,500 out of your paycheck. So it's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. You've got, either you maintain your civil service status that gives you some protection against getting fired, or you get to keep $3,500 of the salary that you were going to get paid normally. You get to keep that, but you give up your status, and then Donald Trump can fire you at a whim. It does not sound like a very good deal either way. Let's go over the baby bucks, the $1,000 baby bond. By the way, this is not the first time that anybody's ever thought of this. I believe Cory Booker, came up with this idea several years ago, but this is a bastardized version of it. It's kind of like a 531, it's like kind of a rich person's account, where the government puts in, if you have a child starting, the day that Donald Trump wrote this thing or had this thing written or signed it into law, whatever. If you have a child this year, the government puts $1,000 away for you. And you, as a parent, can add up to $5,000 a year to put into that account. Now, if you are a working class person or, lower middle class or just a standard under 50K a year person, the chances of you being able to squirrel away $5,000 on the side to put into this account, it's going to be a lot more difficult. If you're a wealthy person, you can do this. Now, the whole idea is that this account will be there for you, and when you're 31 years old, you can cash it in. But you can't cash it in just, to make some money. You have to spend this on either a small business loan or a down payment on a home. Now, that sounds good in theory. And if you do it that way, you are only going to get taxed at the capital gains rate, which is much lower than your standard federal income tax. Now, if you happen to spend it on anything else or anything else that the government in power at the time, when you're 31 years old, and you spend it on something else, you're going to have to pay the regular federal income tax rate, which could and probably will be much, much higher. So this is basically set up for wealthy people who are already wealthy to be able to put in large amounts of money for the kid. And oh, by the way, these the amount of money that you're putting in there, like I said, it's got to be spent on the things that you're allowed to spend it on, a small business or a down payment on a home, or else you incur the full amount of taxation. But I'm not 100% sure whether or not you can donate $5,000 per each parent, or if it's just for a two-parent household can be able to put it in there. But the amount of money that you are able to put in there as a regular common folk, if you can afford to do it, will cause the amount of the amount of money to accrue over the years. But if you decide to spend it on anything else, you're going to have to pay the full amount. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought there. But it might seem like it's a good idea in principle, and yes, it is. But that was the point I was trying to make. This money that is being put in there, it has to be invested in the market. So this is government money going into an account for you that has to be in some kind of money market, low yield, kind of like like a 401k, IRA, SAR/SEP account type of deal. So it is money being put into an account by the government that is going to be able to be used and traded on by Wall Street. So, I mean, if they, like they want to do with all things, they want to privatize it, and they, like, for instance, they would love to privatize Social Security and let the stock market play with the money, just like they did with Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and in all of those home investments back in 2007, 2008. And we see how that worked out. It was a huge collapse, and everybody, so many people lost their homes, and the gains were privatized for the wealthy, and the losses were socialized for the rest of us. So, I mean, this just seems like a scheme set up very similarly for the wealthiest among us to be able to squirrel away money, pay very little tax on it, and maybe benefit some wealthy people's kids, or, just a little added bonus to what other wealthy people's nepotistic child gets to use for whatever the fuck they want to. Anyway, like I said, that they made cuts to SNAP, which are huge, and and of course they're means testing the hell out of it, so less people will be able to get it. And here's a nice little bit of means testing. Up until this point, you as a parent are allowed to get a certain amount of food stamps for your child, if you have a child or children. Up until the age of 11 years old, you can get some kind of food stamps to help feed those kids. Well, they've lowered that age down to 7 years old. So if you're 8 years old, I guess, I don't know, bootstraps, put on a pair of work boots and get out there and, and work in the factory or something. I don't know. But that's just another way to means test it. A couple of years ago, Arkansas did something very similar about Medicaid, and they did some means testing with that. They were, using the same talking points. We want to get rid of fraud, waste, and abuse, except they didn't call it there. They were just saying they wanted to make sure that the people who were collecting Medicaid in their state were actually deserving of it. Now, after this thing went through, and it failed, by the way, they did a little bit of study on that program that they tried to implement, that they did implement. And 95% of the people who were on Medicaid actually qualified for the benefit. 95%. But yet, only 75% of the people were actually able to weed through the bureaucratic paperwork nightmare to be able to, to re-qualify for it. So they managed to knock 20% of the recipients of Medicaid off of the register, and those people just did without health care. Whether they couldn't figure out how to work the computer, whether they didn't have enough of the, they didn't fill out enough forms, or they didn't check in 1, 2, 3, 4 times a year. It's another way. This means testing is just another way to put up a bureaucratic wall between you and your health care. And, every time I hear the Republicans talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, this is the waste. This is the fraud. And by the way, 90% of all of the fraud that's going through Medicare and Medicaid are done through the actual hospitals and the people that that own the machines that are used in these medical device companies. I mean, I've already talked about Rick Scott in the past, who is a senator for Florida, used to be the governor of Florida, and he was responsible for $1.7 billion worth of Medicare fraud. And, and then last week, I was talking about a video I saw of him where he, Jesus Christ, where he just, chastising those able-bodied 30-year-old men, the mythical guys in the basement playing video games, sucking on the government tit. And that guy was one of the biggest perpetrators of Medicare fraud in fucking history. But yet he is chastising everybody else. Anyway, so Arkansas did some means testing, and 95% of the people who actually qualified for it, but only 75% of those people actually got to get the benefits of it because of the bureaucratic mess that they stick in front of you. So when I hear somebody talk about waste, fraud, and abuse, and I think, they're like, oh, the Democrats, they're always doing all this extra bureaucracy. It's like bullshit. You guys love the bureaucracy when it comes to cutting people's social safety net. You fucking love it. Oh, also, I mentioned last week, I believe it was like $47 billion to fund the wall. Somebody did a little bit of math on it, and I found this fascinating, that if you were to count up all of the people coming across the border under Biden, his 4 years under Biden, every person that crossed the border. And remember, those first couple of years we were dealing with COVID, so nobody was crossing the border at that time. But those, if you count up all of the, the migrant horde that's coming into the country, to rob you, to burn down your house, to steal your money, and to, take your wives and your children. If you added up all those people and you split the $47 billion that she's going to take to build this wall, you could have paid off every one of those people over $6,000. Just like, here's $6,000. Just, I don't know, stay in Mexico, or, maybe just let them in. I mean, I heard that we're having a birth rate problem in America. That could be a help to solve that. Well, we're one of the few countries where people want to immigrate to. I don't know, maybe not so much anymore. Jesus, with all the black bagging ICE is doing. But anyway, I just found that, that little bit fascinating. You could give every one of those people crossing the border $6,000 just, because you want to build the wall. Wait a minute. Hold on. I thought Mexico was paying for that shit. Come on, what are we doing? God damn. Oh, there was another thing in the bill. They've raised the SALT tax deduction from $10,000 a year to $30,000. Now, that's really not going to benefit you and me. We're not paying in to state government more than $10,000 because we're just regular old common everyday folk. This is going to be kind of a boondoggle for the rich elite. SALT tax deduction is state and local taxes. So let's just say you're a wealthy business owner and you're paying the state, $25,000 in taxes. You can deduct the $25,000 from your federal income tax, so you pay $25,000 less on your federal income tax. That's not benefiting the common man. Most people are not paying $10,000 a year to state and local government. They're not even most people are not even making $25,000, But they've raised it up to $30,000. So if you're paying that much money, you can write that off of your federal taxes. So wealthy business owners, good for you. We've already discussed if you're making over $4 million a year, you're going to get back in taxes something like $385,000 a year in taxes. But if you're earning $50,000 or less a year, you're going to be paying more in taxes. So awesome. Anyway, the Senate is now got the bill. It's passed through the House. The Senate's got the bill, and they want to get it wrapped up by July 4th so they can go on their summer vacation. Wouldn't that be nice? Get to fuck us all over and then, go celebrate America with some fireworks and some hot dogs. Sounds awesome, doesn't it? Hey guys, thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed what you saw, please like and subscribe. Keep rocking.